Hello everybody, welcome once again to another edition of In Pit Lane. I'm Brett Ramsey. Well, in case you haven't heard, it's ratings week here on LocalVision, and if you haven't rung this number yet, 9690-1755, well, now's your last chance. The phones close at 12 midnight tonight, so if you want to be in the draw for that great prize of a mystery flight for two, and to get regular programming updates from us here at LocalVision, ring now and say that you're an In Pit Lane viewer. And tonight on In Pit Lane, one of the main contenders for this year's Australian Drivers' Championship and one of the Holden Young Lions, Mark Noske. Also, we'll look at sponsorship in motorsport. Where do you get it and how? Also, a couple of apologies. You may remember last week that we did preview that David White from Motorcycle Australia would be with us this week. Unfortunately, David has had another commitment come up in Queensland and can't be with us, but he will be on later on in the year, closer to the Australian Motorcycle Grand Prix. Also, we know there are people hanging out for this, but the tractor pull footage, the stuff that we did down at Carrum, that will be coming up in a couple of weeks' time on a special edition of In Pit Lane. And that's May the 22nd, when we will have a 1 hour special at 8 o'clock, at the special time of 8 o'clock, in which we will also be looking at the controversial CAMS report towards 2000 and beyond. We'll have all the major players in here from Formula V, HQ Racing, Formula 2, Sports Sedan Association, and hopefully somebody from CAMS to explain their point of view on that controversial document. So be watching that. That's on May 22nd. Now, our first guest tonight is one of this country's most successful racing drivers. He won his first Australian title at the age of only 20 and from 1991 to 93 dominated the Australian Drivers' Championship. He's won the Australian Touring Car Championship on 2 occasions, won at both Sandown and Bathurst, as well as driving on some of the world's great circuits, including Le Mans. Now he drives for the Mobile Holden Racing Team. But is he happy? Why does he do it? What drives him on? What dark secrets lurk beneath the soul? Well, let's ask him, because he is here, and he is Mark Skaife. Mark, welcome to In Pit Lane.
Hi, Brett. Thank you.
Now, tell me, a lot of people don't realise that you have done a lot of overseas racing over the years, most recently at Le Mans. What sort of an experience is that?
Well, I thought Le Mans was probably one of the best things I've ever done because, I mean, the cars are incredibly quick, and it's a circuit that's very much like Bathurst in some ways because it's a road track. You don't get to do very many miles before you get there, and obviously I hadn't driven there before, so it was a bit of a learning experience. There are very fast corners. There's some sections obviously where the cars do about 210 miles an hour, and I would have thought that you know, as different and as difficult as the cars are to drive, and the conditions obviously change through the night, that you know, it's a pretty awesome thing, and probably for me one of the best things I've ever done over there.
How daunting is that experience of driving at night? I mean, you're on, as you said, a strange circuit in a strange car. It's not as if you're driving a Commodore around. How did you find that the first time you went out at night?
Well, I mean, it's not too bad because driving in the night with the lights, etc., probably isn't too bad. I mean, it's very similar to the daylight if the lighting's good. But the drama for us was the first time that I drove there was that there was no braking markers out there. So you're spearing along at 210 miles an hour, you don't know where the next corner comes up, and that was difficult because often, say if that was Bathurst, that wouldn't be a problem for us because there are other landmarks, whether it's braking markers or whatever, there are other landmarks around the circuit that you pick up on that you probably don't need braking markers. You've been there enough and you understand the scenery. But at Le Mans, I mean, I had no clue. So you're spearing down Mulsanne Straight and you wouldn't know whether that pub there was, you know, 100 metres or 1 kilometre from the next corner, and that was probably pretty difficult.
You drove a car at the Lister over there. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, basically they're rear-wheel drive, big horsepower, got big tyres, 14 inch wide. They've got about 4 or 5 times the downforce of our touring cars. They weigh about 1,000 kilos. They've got 650 horsepower, 570 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, they're a really quick thing. So actually that car was, in the race, the quickest car down the Mulsanne Straight. I think it did 214 miles an hour.
That's stunning. Also, you did some Formula 3000 racing, didn't you, at some stage?
Yeah, I did Formula 3000 the last couple of races. I went over in 92, did some testing, and I come back and did Bathurst. And as soon as we'd finished Bathurst, I got on the plane on Sunday night, went to Europe, and did the last 2 races of the 92 series, which again was one of the best things I've done. It's obviously based on getting Winfield to pay for that at the time. Rothmans obviously were quite keen to put, or to get Winfield to be a more international brand, which is what they've done now. Yeah. So it's taken a long time for them to achieve that with Formula 1, but their intention was to launch Winfield around the world and in Asia and in Europe. And we went there and did the last couple of races of 92, expecting to do the full season in 93. But based on how expensive it was then, I suppose compared to now, it was probably about $500,000 or $600,000 more than a season in F3000 now, and that was probably the end of that little deal for us.
Well, of course, yeah, the Formula 3000 now is a control formula, so I mean, it was getting out of control, obviously, and they've dragged that back in again. But you'd obviously have some, empathy for what Craig went through in his year over there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've explained to a lot of people. People thought that Craig didn't do a very good job last year, and I sort of beg to differ, because to go there and not know the tracks, not know sort of anybody in terms of engineers, couldn't speak the language in a Austrian, German-speaking team. I mean, it's a pretty tough call, and there was no way that you can go there in 1 year and do a good job. You've got to go there, learn some tracks, get organised, sort of like the place in terms of, just being able to live there and be comfortable about it, and then inevitably go and do a good job on the racetrack. And to expect great things in the first season there is just craziness.
So you're disappointed that he had to come back so that year earlier and didn't get that second year once he'd learnt the circuits and learnt how things go?
Yeah, look, I think, to be fair, that's what was required. And the other thing was that people were making comparisons with Craig and Mark Webber, and that was really a pretty unfair comparison, because Mark Webber was driving in a domestic British F3 series, and although he was going well, and at some of the other international events he did pretty well, Craig was against the top 40 young blokes from all around the world in really what is probably another major step up in between Formula 3 and Formula 1. So, I mean, the comparison wasn't a fair one, and I think probably Craig did a much better job than people perceived.
So this year you're driving with Craig. There's been some talk that the pairings might change again, but that's not on, is it? You will definitely drive with Craig?
No, at the moment that's what the team have decided, and that's where it'll go. Yep.
Last year we spoke to you out at Sandown when you were driving with Brocky, and at the time we were talking about the sort of pressure you might be under, and you said, well, no, it's no real pressure. But in hindsight, I mean, was it pressure being there with everybody focused on you with Brock's last appearances?
Look, I suppose a little bit, but it's one of those things where you can only do your best. I mean, you just get in the car and you blaze around and you can only do your best. I mean, Brock was so busy with his media and promotional commitments and the fans for his last couple of races that I was able to be in the car a bit and to make sure that the car was going good enough. And as it turned out, I mean, really, at Sandown and Bathurst, for him to lead his last couple of races and for the car to start from pole at both races, I mean, it was probably as good as we could do without winning them. I mean, it was disappointing with a silly thing like the throttle cable clip falling off in the race at Sandown, which we should have won, and at Bathurst with silly sort of flame-out drama. It was, again, one of those things that, I mean, in Brock speak, it was, if it's your day, and it wasn't our day.
I suppose it's a bit like Bradman going in and failing in his last appearance. I mean, it would be almost have been too perfect if he'd have won those 10th races, wouldn't it? Well,
that's pretty right, but I think also you've got to say that if you're making that analogy, Bradman probably got 30 or 40 runs before he did get out. So probably for Brock, I thought Brock's first stint at Bathurst was one of his best drives for a long time. I mean, it was a really good drive. He was pressured by Perkins the whole way. His speed was really good. I mean, he did a 2-minute 12.4 early in the race, which was a really good time. So I thought his start was good, and obviously his drive was very good. It was very heady. He led it by the minimum amount. There's no use trying to get a 30-second gap at Bathurst these days.
You mentioned the words pressured by Perkins there. You know what that's all about after last weekend at Winton. Tell us about that. Had a hard time with Larry?
Well, I did have a hard time with Larry. I mean, it's a little bit strange because he and I have probably raced each other over a long period of time and some pretty tough races. And it's always been pretty fair. I mean, you can remember Bathurst in '93. We basically raced each other all day, and there was 10 seconds difference in the cars at the end of the day. So we've never had a problem. But I had a couple of dramas with him at Winton, to be honest. I mean, he hit the back of the car, I thought, unnecessarily in the first race, going to the first corner, and fired me in the paddock. And really, more arse than class, I rejoined the track without running into the field. And then the next time, I did fire up the inside of him. I bumped him to get up the inside of him. And on the exit of the corner coming onto the back straight, he decided to fire me in the paddock again. So there was a bit of a heated exchange. He might have just fallen off the bottom of my Christmas card list, I think.
Talking of Winton, Dick Johnson is well known for his dislike of the place, but watching it on the weekend on the television, does any racing driver actually like Winton?
Look, it's actually a funny place. It's too slow and it's not as demanding as it should be, and the tracks that are really good are obviously the sorts of circuits that have sort of an unforgiving nature, that have good character in terms of uphill, down dale, lots of different speed style corners, some humps and some bumps, and make it difficult for the driver. So Bathurst is a classic example of a really fantastic racetrack. So Winton is not like that. So I don't think everybody likes it. It's not the sort of place that you'd stand there at the start of the year and say, I can't wait for Winton. But at the same time, it's a very technical circuit. To do a really good lap there, it's very hard. And because a lot of the corners lead into other corners or lead onto straights, if you make one little mistake, it makes a big difference to your lap time.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in tonight. We're right out of time already, but best of luck for the rest of the touring car season. Just quickly, I know I'm getting the wind up now, but at what point in the championship do you say, now my job is to try and get Craig through, or are you going to fight right to the end?
Well, look, at the moment, I think there's 5 guys that can win the championship. From first through to fifth, there's 100 points. 100 points is less than one round. There's 15 races to go. I would have thought probably 2 or 3 rounds down the track will actually make some decisions about who's leading and who's doing what. But at the moment, I'm battling to win it.
Okay, well, best of luck at Bathurst and for the Touring Car Championship. And for now, Mark Skaife, thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
Thanks, Brett.
And when we return on In Pit Lane, we'll head out on the sponsorship safari, and joining us here in the studio, Formula Holden star Mark Noske. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to In Pit Lane. Now, as you've probably been hearing all week here on Local Vision, it is ratings week. Now let me just explain this very quickly, the way this works. We want you to ring this number now. Here it goes across the bottom of the screen, 96901755. Ring that if you're watching now. Not only do you go into the running for a great prize, which is a mystery flight for 2 somewhere in Australia, courtesy of Local Vision, but also you'll be put on a mailing list so you can keep in touch with what's happening here on the station. So remember that. Also remember, put down in your diary now, May the 22nd, we'll have that big tractor pull story and also a special forum on the CAMS report towards 2000 and beyond. It should be a very interesting program. Well, motorsport is fueled by dollars, and unless you choose your parents very carefully or win a major jackpot in Tats Lotto, you need sponsors. But how do you get them, and what are companies looking for? These people seem to know. It might look like a swanky high-class cocktail launch of a new Hollywood blockbuster or the Liberal Party's new healthy eating policy, but it's not. The lavish reception at the Duck restaurant at Melbourne's Crown Casino was the launch of OAMPS sponsorship of Christian Jones' Spectrum Formula Ford and the EL Falcon of Ryan McLeod and Mike Conway. So what attracts a major company like OAMPS to make such a large investment in motor racing? OAMPS CEO Rob Porter says the reason is simple.
Well, I'm standing here leaning on probably the most powerful marketing tool that I've seen in a long time, and our company's business is insurance. And Brett, with a company that's particularly involved in petroleum distribution and the insurance thereof, we've joined many of our clients at the racing circuit. We knew we had to do something about building a company brand name and an image, and it was quite obvious that motor racing was going to be the place that we did that. And we've just been testing the water, and we found where we want to be, and it's with the V8 touring cars. We want to be known generally as the smart sponsor, not the rich one.
For OAMPS, with their automotive involvement, the link with motorsport is fairly easy to see. But what about non-motoring related companies? The Duck Restaurant, the venue for the team launch, is also an associate sponsor. How did they get involved?
Well, I think we're a fairly high-profile business, obviously with Crown Casino and people like Philip Murphy as an owner and James Tan. We've decided that we want to do high-profile things. It's all about public awareness. Motorsport is very popular with Melbourne and generally Australian public, and we think it's a good thing to be a part of.
So how did the deal come about? How were you approached?
Funnily enough, over dinner, being in the restaurant scene, Rob Porter from OAMPS has become a regular client, and through him we've developed a relationship and seen what he's doing, and we've decided we want to be in that. He's a bit of a winner, and the company's a winner. And young Christian Jones, of course, is driving the Ford Spectrum, and we've got McLeod and Conway driving the V8 Tourer. We're happy to be a part of it. And we're experts at feeding people and giving them drink, and this is what this is about. So.
Across town at City Ford, the NASCAR Ford Thunderbird of Gene Cook sits in the window. It's this sort of off-track promotion that's become as important for sponsors like City Ford as success on the track.
Look, the sign on the car means nothing unless you've got the support of the people and the company that you're actually supporting. And Gene is a customer who is always putting my face forward to the industry. He's always suggesting City Ford's name to anyone who is in the market for vehicles, obviously. So we need someone who's prepared to support us as well, as much as we're prepared to support the customer themselves.
There's no doubt that the quest for sponsorship dollars is a tough one. So what advice does Gene Cook have for younger drivers looking for that big break?
Well, firstly, you've got appearance and the way you present everything, and you've just got to keep trying. Like it's the old story. Like you're probably going to get 10 doors slammed in your face before you'll get one person to even look at you. And it is no point going in and saying, "I want $500,000 or $100,000 because I." You've got to go up there and even get in the door first. Like just get some product out of someone, and then maybe next year they'll give you a product and a few bulbs. And then it might end up that all of a sudden after 2 or 5 years it might be an acceptable sponsorship that really picks up and pays all the bills, and that's what you've got to do. You just got to keep on trying.
Well, I mean, never undersell yourself. You've always got to sell yourself as being the person that you think you can be and that you want to be. And you just can't give up. You just cannot give up. The sponsorship, although you've got to have the right product and you've got to be able to put it together and make it a feasible package, sponsorship is still a numbers game, and the more doors that you knock on, the more chances you've got. And never, ever give up, and always look for an opportunity. They are out there, as this is proof of. It is value. It's great value for a lot of people, and that's why people like OAMPS are doing it.
You know, it's incredible when you think of it, but in the modern world of Australian motorsport, people like Mark Skaife and Glenn Seaton are actually considered veterans. The sport's experiencing a youth boom, and our next guest personifies that boom. I knew I'd have trouble with that word. Like Mark Skaife, he's another second-generation racer and is yet another Holden young lion, driving this year with Greg Murphy at both Sandown and Bathurst. He currently lies second in this year's Australian Drivers' Championship to yet another youngster, New Zealander Scott Dixon. He is Mark Noske. Mark, welcome to In Pit Lane.
Thanks, Brett.
Now, Formula Holden, we've said this in the past on the program, but it's really exploded this year, and one of the reasons is the presentation of the car. Your car, it looks absolutely stunning. Tell us about how you came to have that great paint job.
Well, our car was created by our team manager, Arthur Abrahams. As you know, it was the Rothmans-Williams paint job of last year, which was driven by Darren Pate. And Arthur had a rebuild over the year, and he came up with this design, which is quite striking. It was a little bit duller without the stickers on it, but once we got the stickers onto the car, it really stands out, and it's one of brightest cars in the field, I think.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, this is something that sort of I've been going on about for years with circuit racing, is that you have a look at the drag racing guys, they really spend a lot of time getting those cars to look good. I mean, that's half of the thing, and that you're doing that now, and it's paying off because a lot of people are looking at your car. And did Arthur do the design? Who did the design?
Yeah, Arthur created the design. I think he scribbled a picture up in his head one night in bed and put the design on the car, and we came up with the stickers and how the stickers had to be laid out on the car. But Arthur was the main designer in the colour scheme, and it's certainly a very striking colour scheme.
This year's racing in Formula Holden has just been sensational, particularly last weekend at Winton. A very close race, really, between yourself, Scott Dixon, Todd Kelly. How do you think you're going to go for the rest of the season?
Well, going by the last two performances where we've won both the rounds after a sluggish start in the first round where we only finished 8th. Hopefully going on form we can get up and win the championship. But in the championship we've both had 2 wins apiece. Scott's had 2, Todd's had 2, I've had 2. Scott's had 3 poles, I've had 3 poles, and I think Todd's got about 4 lap records. So it's definitely one of the most competitive seasons that Formula Holden's ever had. And hopefully with the developments we've got with the 95 car we can continue that, and hopefully we'll supersede the 92 cars and get the jump and win the championship.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. You're driving probably the most advanced car in the field, but it doesn't seem to be that far ahead of those 92 cars. What's holding you back? Is it the plank underneath, or is it just trying to find the setup?
Well, they did a lot of development last year, but we've gone in a completely different route to what Darren Pate had. And it's really taken, the deal wasn't done until late January, and we've only done really 2 days testing at Phillip Island, and the results weren't there at the start of the year, but now we've done a little bit of testing, the results are starting to come, and now it's just a matter of building on the development, and hopefully we will leapfrog the 92 cars, and they'll bottom out at the end of their development, and hopefully that'll allow us to get up to the championship.
You're also, as I said, a member of the Holden Young Lions, which is, there are Holden Young Lions everywhere seemingly. It's becoming a bit like the Hitler Youth. Every time you turn around, there's another Holden Young Lion. We've got, in fact, Owen Kelly's joining us next week on the program. Tell us about that. You're driving with Greg Murphy this year at Bathurst and Sandown.
Yeah, with I actually got the call up to I'm not actually labelled a young lion anymore. I'm actually labelled a factory driver. So you've graduated? I've graduated from last year, yeah. So
did you go up with a funny cap on and get a rolled up piece of paper, or
get your diploma? They've kept Todd, and they've retained Stephen Ellery this year, and they've graduated Owen Kelly, and I got the call up into the lead team with Greg Murphy, and hopefully, I think Greg and I will be a very competitive pairing, and our aim this year is to get up to Bathurst and do a very similar job that Jason and I did last year. But hopefully we'll start the race on Sunday morning and we can get on and get a good result.
How did you feel that morning at Bathurst when during the warm-up, when Jason put the car into the wall?
Absolute shock, really. In a way it turned out, this is saying it a funny way, it turned out to be good because I spent the day with my title sponsor Primus. I spent the day up in their corporate hospitality suite, and I got to know them very well, and as that's progressed into their title sponsorship of me this year. So the result wasn't good at the racetrack, but I got a good lead in with Primus, but that was certainly one of the most shocking incidents I've ever seen. I just couldn't believe it.
Well, obviously it's done you good, and obviously the HRT boys were impressed with you. Asking you back. To partner Greg. A former winner, so they've obviously got a lot of faith in you. Is the V8 Supercars, is that your future, or would you still like to go overseas, perhaps, and race open wheelers?
Well, you've got to keep your options open. I think. You need to raise your profile a lot in Australia. And with the V8 Supercars, I think it's detrimental to do that for maybe next year. But I'm like every other young open wheeler driver, and I've got the bug with the open wheelers. And we'd like to get back over to America and hopefully run the Indy Light season, so we'll just have to wait and see what the rest of this year produces.
Well, it's from a purist point of view, that's always good to hear. So we wish you the best of luck. I was going to talk to you about your experience in Formula Ford 2000, your brief one with Jason Bright, but we're right out of time right now.
Yep.
But for the moment, best of luck for the rest of the year, both in the Formula Holdens and with the V8 supercars at Bathurst and Sandown. And for the moment, Mark Noske, thanks for joining us in Pit Lane.
Thanks very much.
Well, as time falls wanking to the floor, it's time to grab the tissues and clean up the mess of another edition of In Pit Lane. Our thanks once again to our guest Mark Skaife, Mark Noske, and to you at home for joining us. Now remember, you have only another 3 hours to ring that number, 9690-1755. There it goes. To be in the running for that mystery flight for two, courtesy of Optus LocalVision, and also to be on our mailing list to get information here on shows on LocalVision. So, and join us again next week when our guest will be, as I said, another Holden young lion, Owen Kelly, and Porsche Cup star Martin Wagg. So until then, remember, motor racing is dangerous. Let's keep it that way. See you next week.